Hello, Robert. It's good to have you. Thanks for agreeing to this. I've been looking forward to speaking with you. So please tell us your name, where you live, and please share your story with our audience.
Hi, Kelvin. Thank you for this opportunity to share my near-death experience story with your audience. My name is Robert Bear, and I wanted to share with you something that happened to me. It was a near-death experience that really had a profound impact on my life. You see, before this experience, I worked as a policeman and was known for being very rigid and conservative in my behavior and interactions. However, after retiring from the California Highway Patrol, I found myself in positions of power such as a university professor or a city manager where my decisions could significantly impact people's lives. So, in 2008, an old police colleague called me at home, and we had a conversation that felt like we never stopped talking since the 1960s when we worked together. As I recount my near-death experience, I believe you will see how it relates to the power and influence we hold over others in different roles in society. While catching up with an old police colleague in 2008, I was asked if I was right with the Lord. Although I initially brushed off the question, it stayed with me. Later that year, I woke up in the middle of the night to find my deceased mother standing at the foot of my bed. Though she spoke to me in what I believe was a telepathic language, I understood every word she meant for me to hear. She told me that I was going to die and urged me to put my affairs in order. After she disappeared, I was left feeling regretful that I hadn't expressed my love and appreciation to her while she was still alive. So, after my encounter with my deceased mother in 2008, I was left feeling restless and sweaty. I couldn't sleep, so I called my father to share what had happened. Sadly, my friend who had called me earlier passed away shortly after our conversation. I traveled to California for his celebration of life and delivered a eulogy in honor of our time together. As I prepared for my annual trip to Arizona to visit my son and his family during spring break, I woke up in the middle of the night once again. It was like the same type of experience happened again, where my friend who had passed away appeared at the foot of my bed just like my mother did. He looked youthful, and he said to me, "I'm going to bring you through the light." We communicated with each other, but I think it was through telepathy rather than words. I asked him what he meant, and he replied that he had to leave because he wanted to visit his grandchildren in Sacramento. Then he disappeared. It was eerie, and I couldn't sleep. I made some phone calls and found out that his grandchildren did indeed live in Sacramento, which was something I didn't know before. I tried to put this experience out of my mind, and I eventually went to Phoenix, Arizona in March 2009. During my trip to Arizona in March 2009, I attended several baseball games with my son and granddaughters. However, I started feeling sick and assumed it was due to the heat, as I was accustomed to cooler weather in Oregon. But my condition worsened with time, and I was looking forward to going back home. On March 22nd, the day after my birthday, my son dropped me off at the airport, and I made my way through a long TSA line feeling unwell. I purchased aspirin and headed to the gate, where I collapsed while putting my belongings in the overhead bin due to a massive heart attack. So fortunately, there were 2 off-duty firemen and a doctor on the plane who knew how to perform CPR and use a defibrillator. I have no recollection of this because I was drawn towards a light surrounded by beautiful colors that I had never seen before. I felt warmth and a presence, perhaps of one or more souls. I found myself in a space that resembled an auditorium, but it was different somehow, and I cannot describe it adequately. While there were people or souls around me, my focus was on the higher power in front of me, which was so humbling that I couldn't bring myself to look at it. I'm not sure how, but I was asked about the good deeds I had done in my life. Suddenly I was drawn to the left, and I witnessed a life review, a complete overview of my life, from conception to death. Later, I shared this experience with my father, who was still alive at that time. I told him about seeing him and my mother by an old Chevrolet. When my father asked if I was in the vision, I said no. Then he inquired about my mother's clothing, and I told him she was wearing a plaid skirt and what appeared to be a sweater. I also mentioned that he was standing next to her, and my mother was, smiling. Intrigued, he went to a box of pictures and produced a photo of him and my mother standing in front of a Chevrolet. He asked if that was what I saw. I said that's exactly what I saw. He told me that the day I saw in my vision was one of the happiest days of my mother's life. Confused, I asked him what he meant, and he explained that it was the day they found out she was pregnant with me, and he had proposed to her and they got married. I was surprised to learn that my mother was pregnant with me when they got married, but we both chuckled about it. He then shared with me a memory of my childhood when our family would go shopping in San Jose on Saturdays. I remembered how I had learned to manipulate my parents. If I asked my father for something, I would likely get it, but if I asked my mother, I probably wouldn't. Despite her Irish Catholic background, my mother was always good to me. Watching these memories of my life as a young boy was a phenomenal experience that allowed me to reflect on the interactions and life lessons that had shaped me. But I saw these baseball cards that caught my eye. They were only a nickel a pack. I asked my father if I could buy them, but my mother overheard and told me no. That was the dynamic of our family. My father always deferred to my mother. So I ended up stealing the cards and was caught chewing the gum that came with them. My mother was furious and made a big scene, demanding that we return to the store and confess. I was grounded for what felt like forever. Years later, I recounted the story to my father and thanked him and my mother for their parenting, which had a profound effect on my life. As I continued to grow and experience life, I went through various situations. Some of the positive moments included falling in love and feeling the joy all over again. However, the most difficult challenge for me was dealing with betrayal, which I still struggle with today. During my divorce, things became very confrontational, and the truth was the only thing that remained. For years, I didn't speak to my ex-wife until a situation arose where our daughter needed surgery for cancer. I found myself in the waiting room with my ex-wife, and we both had to put aside our differences for our daughter's sake. This encounter occurred after my near-death experiences. While sitting in a room with my ex-wife, I acknowledged that we had not spoken in a long time, and our past interactions were unpleasant. However, I suggested that we should put our differences aside and come together for the sake of our daughter, who may need both of us in the future. After agreeing to this, I asked her a personal question regarding betrayal, admitting that I had seen some in my own life review. Surprisingly, she confirmed that what I had seen had actually happened. Betrayal, whether intentional or not, can be difficult to deal with, and it all came flooding back to me during my life review. As I was reflecting on this, I noticed something moving on my right side. To my surprise, it was my dog Scooter, who had passed away in 2001. I couldn't believe it when I saw her, as I had no idea that dogs could go to the afterlife. Although she couldn't come to me, it was heartwarming to see her again and witness her happiness. So during my life review, I witnessed various moments of my life, including the birth of my children and both happy and sad moments. However, I found myself back in my body, lying in a hospital bed in the emergency room. I later learned that I had been declared deceased for at least 45 minutes before being revived, but then passed away again for about 10 minutes. Fortunately, a doctor from Pakistan refused to let me die and save my life. The second time I passed away, I had a different kind of experience. I found myself hovering above the bed, watching the medical team work on me. While I could see the flat line on the monitor and heard them yelling that they had lost me again, my attention was focused on another area of the hospital. So the ambulance brought me to the hospital, and along with me, they also brought my personal belongings. While in the ambulance, a couple of people were going through my wallet, trying to figure out my identity. I observed them and listened to their conversation, which included some policemen. I have 2 wallets, one for my regular stuff and the other containing my badge and ID. They were trying to find my insurance cards, which were in my police wallet, and I tried to tell them, but I realized they couldn't hear me. At that point, I thought I might be dead. However, I was revived again by that same doctor who had been taking care of me. I stayed in the hospital for a few days in the intensive care unit, and during that time, the doctor checked on me regularly. I shared with him what I had witnessed while they were working on me in the emergency room, and he asked if I saw it. I replied, yes, I did. Well, I overheard a conversation where some people were talking about me. One of them went and brought the people who were working that day to my bedside and asked them to repeat what they had said. When they did, it matched exactly what I had heard earlier. This incident made me think about near-death experiences, which people often describe in different ways. Some may talk about seeing their life flash before their eyes, while others may talk about hovering over their body. However, Since there are no cameras or videos to document these experiences, it can be challenging to convince others that they actually happened. Personally, I had 2 different types of near-death experiences on the same day while in the hospital. After spending a lot of time there, all I wanted was to go back home to Oregon. The doctor, however, recommended another surgery before I could leave. I managed to convince him to let me go back to Oregon, promising to have the surgery done as soon as I arrived. And I kept my word. I'm not sure how I managed to board that flight, but I did. I made it all the way back to my home in Oregon and then went to the hospital to have the next surgery. Today marks my 499th day of extra life, and tomorrow will make it 5,000 days since I came back to life. It's truly a blessing, and I try to live each day as if it were my last. Coincidentally, around the same time I experienced my near-death experience, Michael Jackson, the famous musician, also died for about 45 minutes. Despite being taken to a renowned doctor in Los Angeles who was known for reviving the dead, Michael Jackson could not be revived. In contrast, I had a doctor from Pakistan who was determined to save me, and I owe a lot to them. It makes me wonder what Michael Jackson would have given to have an additional 4,999 days of life like I have had. I feel extremely blessed and grateful for this opportunity to speak with you.